The interesting thing is, I mean, as you were commenting on being a black woman in America, you know, the gift that I did have, if you want to call it a gift, is I'm a white male. And the reality is that while I had, the experience of poverty and a lot of negative experiences, it can't compare because if I look the part, if I act the part, if I speak the right way, if I dress the right way, if I act a certain way, then it is assumed I belong there. And
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
is a very, very big difference. Uh, and once I was able also to be compassionate to myself, what she made me realize then was that everyone is suffering. And that when you're focused on your own suffering, it does many things. One is, of course, it negatively affects your physiology, but the other is that it becomes very self focused and you're
Hmm.
not able to see clarity outside of the box you've created. And once you're able to see that, you appreciate that so many people are suffering, that it's not just you, and that many of us are carrying a common burden. And when you're able to see the world that way, what happens is that you change how you react to the world. Because once I realized that events are events, they're not good, they're not bad, it's not about me at all, they're just events. Because, many people have a tendency to paint their own experiences, which I would say are black and white, with different colors of emotion.
Hmm.
And that becomes the memory, not the black and white uh,
Yes. Yeah.
photograph. So every time they dredge that memory up, it has all the emotion associated with it. And it can be very, very negative for an individual. So she changed how I saw things. And then when I looked at my parents, I no longer had anger or hostility. I felt, in some ways, their own pain and their own challenges dealing with their own suffering. And as a result, I was much kinder, much more forgiving, and more thoughtful. And what I tell people is when I changed how I interacted with the world changed how it interacted with me.
Mhm. Yes.
And I think a lot of people need to learn that. You know, if you walk a certain way, which shows either fear or anger or hostility, people have the ability to intuit those emotional states and they respond accordingly.
Hmm.
So when I changed how I saw the world, then this started opening a lot of doors for me. And I also became much more confident and believed that I had the ability to potentially do anything. And unfortunately, this is so often the case. When you have a dream or an aspiration and you express that to people, um, unfortunately, even with relatives, they'll say, well, you can't do that. That's not going to happen. You're not good enough. And what they're really telling you is they could not imagine it and they couldn't do it. But what they're trying to do is to take your power away from you so you will sit next to them and not exceed them, sadly. And I had many friends who were kind enough to tell me that I would never go to medical school. Now, fortunately, I didn't believe any of them. But when it came time to apply to medical school, we had to get a letter from the pre-med committee that would support our application. And I went to the office to obtain that or to get an appointment. And the secretary looked at me and she said, I'm not giving you an appointment. And I said, well, why not? And she said, well, it would be a waste of everyone's time. Now, again, imagine someone telling you that you are a waste of their time. Uh, So I looked at this woman and I said, well, I appreciate that's your opinion, but I'm not leaving here until you give me an appointment. And she, in fact, did. And so I had the pleasure, when the day of my appointment, to walk into an office which had 3 people in it, all at the end of a long table, and I was at the other end. And the person in charge, he took my file and he threw it on the table, and he said, "Say what you have to say, so we can get this over with." And I looked at this person and I said to him, "Who gave you the right to destroy people's dreams?" And I said, "There's not a single bit of evidence that shows above an average level of intelligence that anything more is needed to be a successful physician." And I then lectured them for about 45 minutes and told them that I was not going to allow them to objectify me into a number. They knew nothing about who I am, my life, my experiences. So at the end of our somewhat one-sided discussion, they were all actually crying. And because once you remove the objectification and they see you as a human being, they can't look away from you. So they ended up actually giving me the highest level of recommendation. And